and welcome back to chapter 11, which is managed networking. Let's just roll the intro. That's quite enough. Yep. So let's jump in immediately to our terminals here. If you remember correctly, we have two machines. We have Rocky 1 and we have Rocky 2. So which are our Durell systems for this RH124. And we are going to go through managed networking, which is all about, well, you guessed it, all about networking configuration. And I'm going to focus right for now on Rocky 2, just because I have not used it all that much. So let's just give it some use. That's all to it. So in every RHEL system, and this also applies to most Linux systems. This is not a specific RHEL or Red Hat thing. This applies to most Linuxes. So this, you can use this in any, it will be a little bit too optimistic, but we can apply this to most Linux systems besides RHEL. This also works. So this is all about networking configuration. I'm not going through IP networking basics like IP addresses, subnet masks, and all of that. I'm not going to go through that on this training, on this chapter, on its training, because I am developing and uploading that specific content to my channel, so like and subscribe to get notified. But I will jump right immediately to the configuration itself, and I like to separate this into two sections. One, it's the one I call the obsolete section. You understand what I mean by this. Obsolete section means commands and ways to do this that are obsolete in a way, which means that they are not recommended in most newer RHEL or Linux systems. So you should use the most current way. But the obsolete way, I like to give it some pointers anyways, because you never know if you're going to go if you're going to cross paths with older systems. So it's nice to have at least some knowledge about that and about that situation of older systems, that because there are more dated Linux systems out there that you might come across. So I'm not going to go through many details, but I'm going to show you a couple of commands, and one of which is the ifconfig command, and the other one is the route command. Okay, maybe when I'm discussing one or the other, I will just diverge a little bit to somewhere else. But for now, let's discuss the ifconfig and route. So ifconfig, it's probably installed, and well, it's not. So since it's an obsolete command, it's usually or often not installed on a RHEL system or any other system. But in order to get it, it's quite easy. You just go to your root login and you just do dnf install nettools. And this should give you the, this will give you the obsolete, also at least a set of the obsolete networking tools. Let me just let them to install, and it's quite easy to install. So let me show you the command here. If you don't remember which package to install to get these obsolete commands, well, you can do something like dnf and then provides, and you can give it, for example, the ifconfig tool, and it's going to tell you that after you do this, you will get this tool, and the package to install, it's the nettools package. And then you will have some of the obsolete tools we're going to discuss here, which ifconfig, it's one of them. So I just type ifconfig, and this is similar to the ipconfig on Windows. Well, it's not the same thing, of course, because they are two different systems, but they have a similar output, and in a nutshell, we get the IP address, the subnet mask, the broadcast address, the IPv6 address, and the MAC address, amongst other things, but this is what you get. You also get the information about the LO. LO means loopback, okay? The loopback interface, it's just embedded on the IPv4 and IPv6 protocols, which means that you need the loopback interface to be here. Don't delete it. Don't do much with it unless you know what you're doing, because we need this interface here for normal operation. So let it be. Here we can see the other interface, which is the ENS160. And this is the name of the network card. If you have multiple network cards, you will have multiple names. And these names are derivative or driven from some type of hardware reference. Okay? So you will see ENS, you'll see ENO, you'll see USB, you'll see Wi-Fi, etc. So this is a name that is extracted from some sort of a physical characteristic of the network card. The kernel will decide this for you. You don't have to do much. You just need to remember the reference. And usually this means if it's an onboard, a PCI card, a USB card, and it will give you just some funny names. In this case, it's not that hard to read this name, but you may come across with some funny names, longer names. Just don't worry too much about this at this point. Just take a reference of the name. Maybe you have seen things like ETH0, ETH1, etc., which means Ethernet, and the kernel just give it a reference number that you can use. There is much to say more about this, but don't worry too much about this at this point. You will, if you advance yourself in your more deeply into Linux and the kernel and network operations, you will learn more about this with me. So for now, don't worry too much about it. Just remember, you do the ifconfig, you'll get the interface name, you get the loopback. Loopback, just let it be. Don't touch it because you need it. And this one is our specific network card. So we have one network card, which is the ENS160, and that's all you have to do. I'm sorry, all you have to know. Don't forget that the ifconfig, the ifconfig, it's obsolete, which means that in some situations this information will not be good enough, will not be accurate enough, it will not be correct. So if you go to the demand page for the ifconfig command, you'll see that this program is obsolete. So you can use it in some situations. For example, in this my virtual machine, it's a very basic virtual machine. It's that it has one network card and not much else, which means that the ifconfig command should work properly for the most part. But avoid it if you want to get completely up to date. But if you are in a system that it's a little bit more dated, you can use the ifconfig, and you should be fine. So avoid using it if you can, because you should use the more current tools. And I'll show you the more current tools, of course. So what you know now is that this is my IP address, this is my subnet mask, and this is my MAC address. If I go to the route command will show me routes, and I'll be not going into much detail about routes. But here we can see the routes we have. I like to use the route -n because the route -n it's a little bit more simple in the output. It will just show you a little bit more raw information. And this is my default gateway, and this is the gateway's address, and this is what you want to know. Again, the route command, it's still obsolete as the ifconfig command. So trail with care when you are using the route command too. I will show you, of course, the newer commands that do replace the route and the ifconfig command, and you will be completely up to date on those terms. So we have now, what do we know? We know that our IP address is this. Let's take a note. So our IP address is that one. Our net mask is that one. And our gateway is this one. Cool. Now, since you are in a subject of trying to find out information about this specific machine, let's try to find out who is our DNS server. Sure, okay. So in order to find out who our DNS server is, there are many options, but I will just use this command here, and I'll just type some random address. Okay, so the dig utility is not installed because this secondary machine it has a very minimal installation, so it's kind of normal for it to have some missing tools, but you can install it. You can just do dnf install dig. This should be enough. Okay, there is no package called dig, but we know how to work this out. We can use the provides. and which means that the bind utils will provide me for the dig utility, which is great. So let's do DNF install, and you can just then provide the package name. See, you know how to work things out if things occur. There you go. Now you can use the dig utility. The dig utility by itself, it's going to allow us to interact with our DNS server, and it doesn't really matter the results here. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that here is going to specify who is my server that satisfied my request, and that's what we need for now. It's to, okay, this is my server. This is the IP address of my DNS server that satisfied my what I requested. Okay, so that's all we need for now. Our DNS server is this guy here, and we are actually good to go. Now we know our IP address, we know our net mask, we know who is our gateway in our DNS server. Let's do the same thing, but with more current tools, shall we? Okay, so the non-obsolete. Okay, I will recommend using a command called the IP command, and that's the one we're going to discuss first. Then we're going to discuss the nmcli and the nm2a. Okay, so this is going to be, I forgot to put the, okay, these are the three tools we're going to discuss here. Let's discuss the IP tool first. The IP tool allows us to well, the IP, it's kind of a very condensate, with many sub-functions, the IP. So if you do the IPA, which means IP address, if you do the IP address command, it will show similar information that we managed to see with the ifconfig command. It's the same thing, just a little bit differently organized and distributed throughout the screen. And you can see the IP address with the net mask, and you can also see the MAC address. Okay, so basically you have the same information that it was extracted by the ifconfig command, but with a more current tool, a non-obsolete tool. And I have here the loopback, and the loopback, there you go. The loopback, it's the one that I wanted to tell you that do not touch it, do not change it unless you know what you're doing. Just let the loopback live on its own corner, and we need it to be happy. We need it to survive. So let the loopbacks be there. And this is the network card we should touch. The information is the same IP, same mask, same everything. So just with a more current tool. We can also do the IP route. Okay, the IP route, you can also see who is our default gateway. So it's the same thing, because all this information is being extracted from the kernel. Okay, so the kernel is the one that is giving us all of this information. So the kernel shows us, the kernel contains the information. Okay, the kernel contains the information. That's where the information is. It's in the kernel. Okay, and that's where this information is being extracted from. So it doesn't matter the tool you use. It comes from the same spot. But in more modern systems, you should use the IP and leave the ifconfig to die. Let it just die peacefully on its own corner. But if you want to use it just for experiment, all the tools, you are of course entitled to it. Okay, so the IP route and IP command showed us the information of, and the dig, it's the dig. Okay, the dig is not obsolete, so you can use it fine. It's still up and running, so you can use the dig all you want. Then you have the NMTY or NM2E. As you know, TUI means text user interface. Text user interface, and it's on one of these menus here. You know what I mean. So here you can just use the arrow keys to navigate. Okay, and for example, I can do the edit connection. I have the only connection I have. I can edit the connection with the tab key. I can navigate with the tab key. Edit. You can just do. I'm not going to change anything for now. We have all the information that I've just manually inserted, and I can just do whatever I want with all of this. So this is nice if you want to have a little bit more. This is not graphical, but it's a very close approximation of some menu-driven text mode stuff. So it's really nice. I'll come back to it if I have to. Then we have the nmcli, and the nmcli, it's a network manager command line interface. This is network manager text user interface. Network manager, it's a service. Okay, it's network manager with a capital N and capital M. Okay, this is the service. This service, now pay attention to this. This service does not provide me the network. This service does not provide me the network. Okay, the network it's being provided by the kernel itself. This service allows us to interact with the kernel to make network changes. Okay, I can stop this service and I still have network. Let me show you. If I ping, for example, some random DNS server on the internet, I'm pinging with success. Now, if I stop it, systemctl stop network manager, network manager, it stopped. Let me prove that to you. It's completely stopped. I can then ping still. Okay, so the network manager does not give you the network functionalities. Network manager will just give me some help in order to configure the network. Okay, so network manager, it's a network facilitator. It's a network configuration proxy to make things a little bit easier to me. But the network manager does not provide the network itself. Network itself, it's provided by the kernel. So the kernel gives the network. Network manager allows me to interact with the kernel to make changes if needed. Okay, good. It's been always like this. Network, it's provided by the kernel itself. It's not provided by some service. It's been always like this. All the tools and services are facilitators to make things a little easier to configure, but it does not give the service itself. It gives just a way to interact with the service in an easier fashion. Okay, cool. Now let's go back to then do an MCLI. I can, for example, do an MCLI connection. Show. Okay, so I can see that I have two connections, and this in a more up-to-date sense, these connections are profile names. Let me show on RockU12. Let me go back to let me get the root, and I've mistyped my password, which is fine, I guess. I didn't. Okay, so let's do the MCLI connection show. Let me just put this a little bit bigger for you guys. Better? Okay. So we have two profiles. We have DNS 760 and the LEO. So these are profile names that by coincidence or with intention, they match the network cards they correspond to. So this corresponds to configurations about this guy, and this corresponds to configurations about that guy. Okay. So the name does not have to correspond with the network card. In this case, it does, just to make things easier. But if you look to this column here, so this profile applies to this network card. This profile will apply to this network card. In this case, the profile name. Why am I so dark? Why is this camera so dark? Interesting. Let me just rotate the light. Wow, something weird is happening with this camera. Never mind, you don't need the camera. You just need to hear me. And this means that this profile, okay, this profile has this. This is the profile name, and this is the device it applies to. So this is the profile name. This is the device it applies to. Okay. Wow, weird. Strange. Is this camera dying on me? Most likely. Oh well, it happens. Well, and this is the profile name. This is the device name. Okay. So the profile name does not have to correspond with the device name. It does not have to, but sometimes it helps in terms of readability. So if I want to create a new profile, for example, I want to create a profile called something else, I can do that, and I'm going to show you guys how it's done. So I'm going to do an MCLI connection. If you don't remember, you can hit the tab key and get some pointers. An MCLI connection add. Okay, and you can then, for example, tab, and I can do the con name. I can give it a name, and I'm going to call it static. Why not? Tab, yes. I can then, of course, there are many options to explore. Okay, I'm just doing this a little, in a really quick fashion. And all of these changes, all of the changes I do within MCLI, the changes are permanent. Okay, every configuration I apply or do using any other tool like the ifconfig command or the IP command, any change I do with those commands, they are not permanent. Don't forget, I have said this beforehand many times. If you want to make permanent changes, those changes need to go to a file, and the changes I'm doing with this NMCLI, they do go to a file. Okay, they do go to a file. So there you go. Don't forget that any change you want it to be permanent, you need to put it in the file. And NMCLI, it's putting things in a file. I'll show the file in a second. So IF name, I'm going to use the ENS network card because, well, it's the only one I have. Okay, and then you can just go on with the configuration. Let's call IPv4 address, and I forget. Let me just remember myself with which is the IP address of this guy. I'm going to recycle my configuration, and again, let me just put a disclaimer out here. Be careful by doing network changes remotely, which is what I'm doing now. I may lose network connectivity by doing this change remotely. So I'm changing the remote server, and if I do some sort of change that will break the network configuration, if I do some sort of change that breaks the network configuration, that means I will lose contact with that server. Okay, so be careful with that. Make sure I have some backup plan, someone sitting down on the remote server console or something, because I'm doing changes remotely, and I have access to the physical server console here. So if there is any problem, I can recover it. But if you are making remote changes to the network, you just be careful that some change may cause the network to break, and this will just disable access to the remote server. So make sure you have a backup plan to recover from some mistake. That being said, avoid making network changes remotely that may break your network connectivity and break your remote access to that specific server. Okay, disclaimer done. Okay, let's give an IP address, and the IP address I'm going to recycle the same IP address, which is fine. Then I can IPv4 gateway, and I can give it the gateway number, which is the other one. Okay, and that's it. I know I'm not configuring the DNS server IP address, but I will do it afterwards, after the fact, so I can show you how it's done. Or I can do IPv4. So all that I'm doing here also applies to IPv6. Okay, it's the same thing. You just do change 4 to 6, and it's the same thing. DNS, I can say it's the 1111. Okay, type. Yeah, I forget the type, which is fine. I can just go somewhere around here. Type and Ethernet. You have Ethernet, you have Wi-Fi, you have bonding, teaming, and there we go. NMCLI connection show. There's my profile static. In order to enable it, NMCLI connection up, and there we go. I don't know if I'm going to lose connectivity. I did not lose connectivity because I just reused the same IP address, so you should be fine. And I do the show. There we go. My new profile is now applied to the network card, which is pretty simple to do. I can do an MCLI connection show and check the details like this. And if I go somewhere here, there we go, have the configurations, my IP, my DNS, my gateways. If I want to do some change, an MCLI connection show. Okay, I can do an MCLI connection modify, for example. I can give it the name, and I can, for example, add an DNS server, IPv4 DNS, and well, not VC5. I can give it the good old 8888. So if I put a plus, I'm adding a DNS server. If I put a minus, I'm removing a DNS server. And if I check the details again, you should be able to see those two added. Pretty straightforward. Now, I said that this is permanent. It's getting written. This is creating files, and the files are here: etc, network connections, network manager, and I have here a subfolder called system connections. And you can see that I have two connections that match an MCLI connection show. So I have the static, I have the static, the ENS, and I go static and ENS. So these are the files that correspond to each profile, which means I can do something like this. If I want to create a new profile based on another one, I can just go here, pick one. Okay, let's use this one as a reference. I can just do a copy, and let's call this static 2. Then I can edit this guy here. Okay, and I can use the changes. For example, I will not do any changes because I want to keep the same IP address and everything else. So I don't want to lose connectivity. So let's give it a new name. And one thing to be careful about is this here: the UID needs to be unique. And since we copied one to the other, means that this UID is the same UID of this one. This is not a good thing. This UID now it's the same UID as this one. This is not a good thing. They need to be unique. So I need to generate a specific and unique UID for this guy. There's an easy way. You just do UID gen. This is going to give you a unique ID. You just copy this, go and edit. Where is it? There. You just need to replace it. You could just make one up and hope that you are lucky enough to get a good one, but this command does that for us, and that's fine. Now, if I go back to an MCLI connection show, you'll see that well, my camera, it's actually weird. Never mind about the camera. I need to check it out. You can see that my new connection is not showing. My static 2, it's not showing here. It's not here. Not visible. Okay. But that's normal because I created a file manually without updating the NMCLI. So NMCLI connection reload, and this should be good enough to show my new one. Okay, and I can do NMCLI connection up, and I can just up to my static 2. And I will not lose connection because they have the same IP configurations. And there we go. My static 2 now it's applied to the ENS to the ENS device. My camera, it's weirdly strange. I need to check it out. No worries. Okay. Cool. Static 2 configuration. I was trying to review in my mind. So if I go to the NM2E, you'll see that you have the connections here, the same thing, and you can use the 2E if you are feeling a little bit more tired and not brave enough to use the CLI. So this kind of wraps things up for now. For chapter 11, managed networking, we managed to see obsolete commands, new commands, how to make changes using the NMCLI and the NM2E commands. And of course, as always, you should, and you also saw how to change by configuring the direct config files. So as always, I encourage you to experiment yourself and go. Now you know enough to explore the helps and the tabs and all of that good stuff, and explore all you want. Ask down below wherever you want to ask about this. I'm always happy to reply to your questions. Like and subscribe. That really, really helps. And I'll see you on chapter 12 or any other video on my channel. Bye for now.